Hello and welcome to the second of our webinars. We're delighted that you can be here from wherever you're based, whether it's morning time, afternoon or evening for you. Welcome, kia ora, and we hope that you're going to enjoy what we think will be a fabulous session. My name is Jane Parker. I'm one of the co-editors of the book that we'll be talking about in this webinar session tonight and today. And this is the book in question, which has just come through the postal system to us. So we're delighted about that as well. I won't say too much more other than that we're now going to hear a few words from Bart van Herke, who is the Research Director of the European Trade Union Institute, and he'll provide a few words of introduction and explanation, if you like, about the book and its meaningfulness to the Institute and the involvement of ELGA and various others in its development. Thank you.
Good morning. I hope you can all hear me well. Good morning to you. Good afternoon, good evening, because I suppose we are participating from different sides of the world. I really want to thank you for joining us at this webinar, the launch of a new book. I'm very happy to be participating in that, a field guide to researching employment and industrial relations. My name is Bart van Herke. You can't pronounce that, so just call me Bart. I'm the director of the research department of the European Trade Union Institute in Brussels, Belgium. I'm really delighted to welcome you to this event. The book, the field guide, is really an important endeavor in terms of progressing how we collectively think and do research concerning the world of work. The methodologies that we use in our employment relations, industrial relations studies, have often looked to other disciplines for guidance and for framing. And I really believe from that perspective that this book provides the latest thinking, the latest state of the art from researchers in these fields, so that we can now draw on really a very broad and wide repository that will better fit our chosen topics of inquiry. Now, you do know that the book was published by Edward Elgar, with whom we've collaborated, of course, in the past, and hopefully we will do so in the future as well, has been supported by the European Trade Union Institute, including, of course, with regard to the organization of this webinar. I'm happy that you'll find both Elgar's and ETOI's logos inside the field guide. At least I haven't seen a hard copy of it, but I'm sure I will soon. And so I think this really very nicely reflects the successful meshing of our efforts to bring this book and its launch to fruition. So I'm very happy about that. Now, this field guide, before I hand over, just want to flag that this field guide really has special meaning for the ETY, and it's not politesse, it's not just politeness. On the one hand, it incorporates experience-based research methods in many of the employment and industrial relations areas that our institute investigates. And please do check out our website if you don't know what we do. Very happy to welcome you there. But it also sees a combination of our research efforts. Several ETY researchers and have been involved as editors and as co-authors, in this book. So thanks again for participating in this webinar. I really look forward, and I think we all look forward now, to an overview of the book from its editors, then comments from the publisher, which I'll always look forward to, and of course a synopsis of most of the chapters from the authors who are all joining us online. So I'm very happy now to hand over to two of the editors. I believe first Jane will speak, and then Mihajla, Gavin, for their overview of the book. So welcome to you all, and enjoy the event.
Tēnā koutou katoa, nai mai haere mai, ko Noelle Donnelly toko e noa. Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Noelle Donnelly. I'm your chair for this launch, co-chair, and one of the 4 editors of this book. We are truly delighted to have you join us today for the launch of this, the Field Guide to Researching Employment and Industrial Relations, which is published by Edward Elgar. I'm joined today by 2 of my co-editors, Jane Parker, who you've just met from ETUI, the European Trade Union Institute, who'll be moderating your questions today. And please, we welcome all your queries and questions and comments in the question and answer chat box here on the presentation. And I'm also joined today by my co-chair, Sue Ressia from Griffith University in Australia, who you'll hear from very shortly. Unfortunately, our 4th co-editor, Mihajla Gavin from UTS in Sydney, is unable to join us today. So before we overview the rationale and the scope of this exciting new book, we would first like to take the opportunity to thank a few people who helped to make this publication a reality. We are indebted to Fran O'Sullivan, who you'll hear from shortly, from Edward Elgar, for approaching us with the idea and the invitation to develop this field guide. She's done an amazing job in steering the project from its inception. Her energy and support that we receive from Fran and all the Elgar team has been exceptional, and we are truly thankful to them for their support throughout this endeavour. And we look forward to future endeavours with them as they emerge. This book would not have been possible without the contributions of our chapter authors, who are here joining us with us today and who you'll hear from very shortly. This field guide comprises of a stellar range of 32 contributions from all corners of the globe, many of whom you'll be able to pose questions to here through the chat facility. Thank you all. We greatly appreciate your enthusiasm and your terrific contributions to this book. We would also like to thank our generous colleagues who took that unenviable task of reviewing chapters and providing feedback. In particular, we'd like to thank Jim Arrowsmith, Braden Elam, Christian Yao, Ozan Alakavakla, and other chapter contributors. Thank you all for all your efforts. We were very grateful to Professors Paul Edwards, Patrice Galette, Greg Bamber, and Russell Lansbury for their kind endorsements of the book. Our thanks also to ETUI for hosting this fantastic event today, this webinar, in particular to Maria Nikolova, who's online here with us today, for the many hours of work that she has put into making this happen. She is the technical genius behind this launch, and we're grateful to her for all her support. Our thanks also to Mehmet Koshal, Beth Staunton, and Bart, who you've just heard from. And lastly, but certainly not least, we want to express our appreciation to Di Kelly for the foreword that she provided to this book. Those of you who are located in the Southern Hemisphere will be familiar with Di's influential book on researching industrial relations from 25 years ago. It's an honour to have Di's involvement in this book, and you will hear from her later in the session when she shares her insights on the future of researching industrial relations. So to give you a little bit of background to where the motivations and the idea for the book came from, the idea of the book stemmed from several key observations that we share. First, we realised that there's a diverse range of topics and issues and themes within the realm of employment and industrial relations. And this kind of breadth has been accompanied by an expanding array of methodological tools. And as many of our contributors today will discuss, quantitative techniques have typically dominated research on certain topics. However, we are increasingly witnessing a rise in qualitative, mixed and multiple methods, a shift that reflects a growing appreciation, we think, for the multi-perspective nature of research in employment and industrial relations. We also acknowledge that some of the methodological advances have been constrained by a number of factors, such as the ideological positions of funding bodies that many of us submit our applications to, institutional regulations, practical considerations, and time limitations that many of us face when we're engaging in our research projects. As Richard Hyman described, our work has often leaned towards bricklaying rather than substantial architectural innovations in employment and industrial relations studies. And this has resulted in progress that tends to be very often incremental rather than radical in expanding existing knowledge and methodological frameworks. Many of us have grappled with how best to investigate the world of work amidst this variety of research approaches and many of the limitations that are placed on us. And it has inspired the development of this book, which provides a collection of chapters that illustrate many of the rationales and key elements of both traditional and emerging research methods. We very much wanted to include contributions that highlight researchers' personal experiences, their expert evaluations and breakthroughs with specific techniques, many of whom you'll hear about today. So it is a field guide, and it is intended to guide you through that process and understanding the benefits and challenges encountered, the often messy realities that we face when we engage in field work, and the lessons learned in both practical and scholarly contexts, we believe is crucial in understanding as you embark in researching world of work. Our aim for the field guide is to equip you with essential conceptual, practical and reflexive insights, whether you're embarking on your first research project in the field or you're leading your 20th or 25th major cross-national study. We very much hope that the field guide encourages you to critically engage with various research techniques and to explore diverse approaches that can significantly advance your knowledge, that can advance policy and can talk to practice in the field. And finally, we want to emphasize that this field guide is intended as a starting point rather than a comprehensive manual or a definitive tome. We hope it inspires you to delve deeper into methodologies of employment and industrial relations and to explore how they can contribute to addressing critical issues that you face in both the workplaces that you work and beyond. So I'd like to now hand over to my co-chair, Sue Ressia, who's going to take you through the structure of the book. Kia ora, Sue.
And thank you, Noelle. Thank you for acknowledging all of the contributors of the book, as well as providing an overview of the primary aims of the book as well. As Noelle said, my name is Sue and I'm a co-editor of the book. I'm a senior lecturer at Griffith University in Brisbane. So I'm coming to you from Brisbane. So good morning from Brisbane and good evening to everybody joining us today. I'm coming from the lands of the Turrbal, Dagara, Yuggera and Yuggera peoples. It gives me great pleasure to now introduce the key sections of the book, of which 9 of the chapters will be shared with you briefly over the course of this evening. The first section is on the evolution of industrial relations and employment relations research methods. And it explores research methods that have been brought into the field and provides discussion on why there has been varied uptake and consideration that needs to be given to the industrial relations context when using these methods. The second section of the book focuses on qualitative methods in employment relations and industrial relations research and raises discussion on the challenges of using qualitative methods where we are ever more bound by strict research timelines and budgets and pressures to produce measurable outcomes, plus the revival we are seeing in archival work, as well as the novel use of co-design processes to produce scholarship. In the third section on mixed methods research, we learn about the possibilities and challenges of using multi and mixed methods in research, and the careful note raised by the authors to justify when, why, and how certain approaches are used. In the fourth section, the book narrows in on the use of research methods to study themes or topics understudied and gives greater voice to participants, such as the use of oral history methods or autoethnography. The fifth section of the book includes a rich discussion about information technology, transnational advancements in IR and ER research, and we learn about the practical approaches, including computational annotation, as well as the large range of large-scale data sets which are available to researchers. The sixth and final section covers co-design in employment and industrial relations research and rounds out the book and tonight's presentations with a focus on transdisciplinary research in equity in the workplace. As we now move into the more formal part of the session, I just want to give an overview of some housekeeping tips to keep us all on track. So Jane Parker will be our moderator for today's session. Jane will be helping track questions that come in. So please make sure that you post these in the question and answer box, and we will visit these at the end of today's session. Also note that we are recording today's session. So now we'll show a short video of Francine O'Sullivan from Elgar, who will provide us with the publisher's comments regarding the book. Over to you, Maria. Thank you.
Chip in really briefly to say, what a brilliant process it's been, and how proud we are to be publishing the book. I'm just showing everyone, and here is the ETUI logo, as discussed earlier. And when we approached Jane just over 2 years ago to sort of look at a book, getting down into the weeds of researching employment relations, it's really unusual to have a book published within sort of that time frame. It's been so smooth from our approach. You would never know there was a massive time difference with a lot of the editors and contributors. And when we had the opportunity to work with them again, we really jumped at the chance. Yeah, you want that, not me. And just a final note on the field guide and what we hope for it. What we found is that these books sort of are really well used and downloaded, particularly the online versions at university. So what I envisage is that they're sort of a comfort and an inspiration to people who are struggling or just starting out in research. And how we wanted it to be was like a support, really, or a book of service, really, to the community. And I think you've all done a really brilliant job in that. Thank you.
Jane?
Thank you, Sue. Thank you to Fran O'Sullivan from Edgar for those kind words of encouragement, especially for people who are beginning their careers as researcher in the field of employment and industrial relations. We now move on to the next section of our launch this morning, and we're going to hear from 9 of our chapter presentators and contributors. They've each been given a very unenviable task of having to keep to a 4-minute limit with regard to providing you with a précis of their fantastic and terrific contributions that they've made to this book. They will highlight a number of kind of key takeouts from each of their chapters. And again, we'd encourage you to very much post your questions on the chat facility available in this webinar. So over to our first chapter contributor. So the first person we're going to hear from today is a fantastic contribution on the evolution of industrial relations research methods, looking at it from a trade union perspective. And this has been authored by Quan Hihang, Sing Sing Tang, and Ray Lamar from the University of Illinois in the USA. So over to you. I think it's Quan who will be presenting today. Thank you for joining us, and a good evening, I think it is, from you today, Quan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kwon Hee-han, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Illinois in the School of Labor and Employment Relations. It's a huge pleasure to present our book chapter on behalf of my co-authors, Professor Ryan Lamar and Professor Ting-Ting Zhang. And I want to start that we are very honored that our chapter has been included as the first chapter of this book. And the title of our chapter is The Evolution of Industrial Relations Research Methods, a review of union effect studies over the past 30 years. And our work emerged from a research question of how have research methods in industrial relations evolved over time? Because industrial relations is a field that addresses diverse labor-related issues using a variety of research methods, and we were particularly interested in following the methodological developments within the field of IR. And therefore, we conducted a comprehensive review of methodological approaches and dependent variables used in union effect studies, published in 3 leading IR journals: Industrial Labor Relations Review, British Journal of Industrial Relations, and Industrial Relations, the Journal of Economy and Society, since 1990. And let me just briefly share our key findings. First, regarding research methods, IR studies have consistently leveraged qualitative methods to capture the nuanced dynamics of labor relations and industrial relations. And also, over time, there has been a clear shift from purely descriptive analysis to the adoption of more sophisticated quantitative approaches, such as mixed method studies or quasi-experimental designs, or advanced associative designs as well. Regarding the dependent variables, wages and earnings and labor relations outcomes have remained central themes in IR research, and also performance and profits as well. Since the mid-1990s, we observed a growing focus on HR and worker-related outcomes such as training or turnover and job satisfactions as well. And lastly, more recently, from the mid-2000s onward, there has been increasing attention on political outcomes and societal outcomes, such as political participation reflecting broader societal implications of unions. We categorize these dependent variables into 3 categories: employer-related material outcomes, employee-related workplace practice outcomes, and then broader societal and political outcomes as well. From these findings, we concluded that the field of IR has shown a consistent commitment to methodological development while evolving its research agenda to address emerging issues. And we think this emphasizes the legitimacy of IR as an academic discipline with its own distinctive characteristics. Our chapter also gives us an important implication that IR scholars should carefully consider the unique aspects of the field when selecting research methods. And lastly, we hope our review provides a comprehensive perspective on IR's methodological trajectory and brings a basis for further methodological innovation in future research. This is the end of our presentation of our book chapter, and thank you very much for your time and attention on our work.
Many thanks, Kwan. And Sing Sing, I see that you're online. Is there anything that you'd like to add to the presentation?
No, I think Kwan kind of represents us beautifully. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you both for that fantastic introduction. This is a really important chapter in the book. It gives a fantastic overview across 3 decades as to how the field of employment relations, industrial relations has developed and the methodological shifts that have taken place. So thank you both. I'm sure that that's going to be a widely quoted chapter for many PhD students and HDR students as they progress forward. So thank you both for joining us here today and contributing to the book itself. We're going to now move over to talk to Professor Chris Ford. Chris joins us today from the University of Leeds in the UK. And Chris, you're going to present to us a précis of your chapter on archival methods. Again, this is a bedrock of many industrial relations projects, and it's gone through a bit of a revival, you say, in recent years. So many thanks for joining us today, and we will look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the opportunity to present about the chapter on archival methods. It's a pleasure to have contributed a chapter to this really important book. In the chapter on archival methods, I look in a bit more detail at what archival methods are and how they're used within industrial and employment relations. When we think about archival methods, I'm thinking here about memos, documents, diaries, online documentation, videos, photos, images, basically anything that has been made in the past and has been shared and then made available for analysis to the research community. And those sort of data and documents are amenable to a whole range of methodological analysis. Some of these documents are available through physical archives, through libraries, dedicated archives that you can visit, like National Archives or trade union archives, and some increasingly recently are available through online sources and online archives. The value of these methods, we look at this in a bit more detail in the chapter in employment relations and industrial relations in particular. I think it's really interesting to think about industrial relations and employment relations, because perhaps more so than in the fields of human resources or management, there is a rich tradition of using archival methods. They're perhaps well suited to unearthing some of the context-specific processes that we might be interested in industrial employment relations. And as Noelle said at the start, these sort of methods are really useful for uncovering some of the messy realities of what happens within the workplace and within employment relations. They can help us explore the role of new and old actors in employment relations. So I've used it in my own research to look at the evolution of the employment agency industry and trying to understand how these intermediaries, employment agencies, have lobbied and engaged with the state to institutionalize their role and embed their role in societies. I think they're also used in a complementary way by many to alongside other research methods such as interviews or survey-based research. They can also give, I think, access to some marginalized voices if those documents and evidence are stored and made available to others to look at. And that may be a potential through which research using archives can highlight power imbalances in the employment relationship. And of course, sometimes if we're looking long in the past, they may be the only means of accessing evidence on a particular topic or issue. There are some challenges, I think, of using archival data. Some of these are methodological challenges and things to think about, and some are more practical. We can assess archival documents in the same way that we might consider the validity or reliability of a survey instrument or interviews, and we can think about the authenticity, the meaning and the credibility of individual documents in relation to other documents which may or may not have been preserved. I think this does raise a broader question to think about for the archival researcher as they embark on using archival methods about what data has been preserved and for what purposes. Perhaps some data has not been preserved and made available. And it's important, I think, to think about what sort of data is there to analyse and what's perhaps missing from an archive and not available and why that might be the case. And finally, just to think to note that accessing archival data does also present some challenges and some things to think about. Digitalisation and digitisation of archives has made archival data more accessible in some cases, and as has sort of indexing and resources available to help researchers access and find out about what data is available to look at in particular archives. Thanks very much, and very happy to have been able to provide a summary of this chapter in this session today. Thank you.
Many thanks, Chris, for that great overview of archival techniques, and in particular the kind of really resonates that kind of messy reality that you mentioned around research methods, but also the value, I think, as you've uncovered, the context-specific value that archival work can provide, and in particular, raising the voice of marginalised actors in the scene of employment relations. So many thanks for your overview. It's fantastic today, and encourage everybody to read that great chapter in the book. We're now going to move over to talking to Fariba. Fariba Darby joins us today from Bangor University. Good morning, Fariba.
Yes.
She's going to give us an overview of her chapter along with Mark Saunders. Mark's not joining us here today, on mixed methods and multi and mixed methods. So many thanks, Fariba, for joining us here today, and we look forward to your précis.
Oh, thank you, Noelle and colleagues, and thank you so much for inviting us to contribute to this wonderful book. I am Fariba Darabi, Associate Professor at Bangor University, and this chapter that I will be presenting on behalf of Professor Mark Saunders from University of Birmingham is focusing on using multiple and mixed methods research design. So we can move the slides. Yeah. So the title of the book chapter is referring to some of the terminologies that have been used in defining what multiple and mixed methods are, and because it seems that there is a variation of definitions for these two concepts. What we are talking about in our chapter is referring to multiple research design as a method that is being used as an umbrella to basically an umbrella methods to data collection and data analysis, and any design that uses one or more data procedure and analysis. And what we mean by mixed methods is when we integrate quantitative and qualitative data collection procedures. So we start off in the chapter by looking at the key shifts and values in the employment and industrial relations, and we are going back to basically to 19th centuries, where Sidney Adbinges Webb's work, so referring to looking at industrial democracy by using mixed methods and looking at documents, for example, for their data collection or personal observations, or using interviews, and those times they call them a skilled interrogation, and also using questionnaires, when again at those times they were calling them wholesale interviews. And it is good to see that this mixed methods has been used basically widely in employment and industrial relations. So this is a good thing to see that has been used from a very long time ago. And then in the chapter, we moved quickly to look at an overview of the methods that has been used in 21st century. And we discussed that there is a well, we refer to Whitefield and Strauss methodological overview work, which we acknowledge and appreciate. And when they reveal that there is a wide range that has been used as a mixed methods has been, or wide range of methods have been used in studying employment and industrial relations. And however, there is a little bit of concern in here that there is a worrying trend that mono methods has been either qualitative or quantitative has been is being used, and only 16% used mixed methods. So we are therefore which we think that this 16% method is not 16% mixed method is not a lot from our perspective. So, and then we are moving from instruments of discovery to advocating utility combining, and to move important aspects into methodological fit, and talking about the and do we see, what we mean by that is, do we see a clear process through a golden thread in terms of the processes that the researchers gone through from the data collection and data analysis and reporting their findings in the mixed methods, and also we focus on the approaches is being used to approaches to qualitative and quantitative that work in harmony to understand complexities in the world that we are living, or complexities in the phenomena that we are investigating. And we're looking at the potential to illuminate different aspects. So the lessons that can be learned and takeaways from this chapter is one of the key things is the terminology that we use. We often see that in literature it refers to mixed methods or maybe multiple methods research design, but would it be more appropriate to talk about and referring to it as a combining methods? Because when we talk about mixed methods, often there is a question that what has been mixed and when the mixing occur, and that is that brings a little bit of it's a difficult questions basically to answer. So in combining methods, we can say that combining methods helps us to develop fuller understanding of what we are researching, and also the phenomena that we are investigating, and triangulation or triangulating findings from qualitative and quantitative will allow us basically to, or will give us more confidence in reporting our findings. So therefore it's a suitable methods to be used, and this is also allows us to generate not only generating theories but also testing theories as well. And we also argue that on the other hand, that is maybe mixed methods or combining methods is not always appropriate for all research. So it's very much depends on the type of research questions that we are trying to answer, and it needs to be the combining methods or mixed methods needs to be done with and greater breadth of knowledge, and there is a need to fit and align it with the research question. It goes back to the methodological fits that we referred to earlier on, and we jump into a little bit on the philosophical assumptions in here, where we when we earlier on mentioned about what is being mixed. Are we mixing two, for example, philosophical standpoints as well? If we are collecting qualitative and quantitative data, are we mixing interpretivist and, let's say, a positivist or philosophical standpoint, or and then we refer to that as we think that it's more appropriate to use pluralistic assumptions when it comes to the to combining methods or mixed methods. Having said that, so it is very much important that to choose an approach that it is trying to answer the research question, and that is key. So throughout chapter we looked at different methods. So we used a lot of published examples, studies that have done within the ENIR, and we that they used mono methods, multiple methods, mixed methods, etc., and we always link it back to see that how it's been done in the field. So, and that is going to be very helpful to researchers or people who are reading this chapter, to see that, to dive into more details in each of those examples, and to see that how it's been actually applied and it's been done. And there are some learnings that can be taken away from those examples. And the final point is that we have we put a detailed in-depth case study at the end of the chapter, and is looking at mixed methods, trying to understand whether employees within an organization can be trusting and distrusting at the same time. And that case study is also has some implications for the organization. So this is what is the and that is important for organization basically to know. And I hope that this summary helps you to get a better overview of what the chapter is about and find it helpful. Thank you
so much, Fariba, for that great essay of your chapter, and thank you for the fantastic elucidation that you had over multiple and mixed methods and the clarification that you provided to early researchers and to many of us who are perhaps more established in the field with regard to the world of employment and industrial relations. We very much see this chapter as a linchpin for several other chapters. It provides a great umbrella overview for many of the kind of subsequent chapters in the book, and we thank you very much for your contribution and your presentation today to bring that chapter to life. I'm now going to hand over to Valeria Pogliano, who's joining us today from KU Leuven. Good morning, Valeria. She is going to present to you her chapter, A Mixed Method Exploratory Sequential Approach, looking at researching unpaid labour within paid employment. Good morning, Valeria.
Good morning, good evening. Thank you very much for having me and having us in this beautiful book. So we are really looking forward to see the book on the table and be able to read all the chapters, fantastic chapters that are in here. Yes, so I will try to present what we have been putting in this chapter, which, as you said, in fact, is about a concrete project which try to use a methodology, which is also a mixed method design, to assess how far and how unpaid labor in paid employment, what normally in industrial employment relations research is called wage theft, contributes to precarious work. And in order to do that, particularly the kind of approach we used was very relational in the sense that we positioned work and automatically also unpaid work at the, if you like, continuum between, in fact, this kind of inside and outside the market. So for work, this means, in fact, looking at work inside the market, paid employment, but also socially reproductive labor outside the market. And for unpaid labor, of course, this meant to look at unpaid labor as wage theft, which we operationalize as time and effort in paid employment, with socially reproductive labor, which is, in fact, developed outside the market. Oh, I have a problem in moving my slides now. Can I move? Sorry for that. I think I have a problem in moving. I will try to reshare.
We can move to the master copy if you like, Valeria.
Yes, but I actually changed it a little bit, but let's see whether, does it work? No, it doesn't work. It doesn't go.
We can see now your first slide there.
Yeah, but no, I cannot move with a second. That's what. So I will, okay. Sorry for that. So what I will do, I'll just share. Can I share this one? I don't know whether. I tried before, but I think it doesn't really work very well. But I can try. Doesn't go.
Be able to scroll down with your arrow if that's any help for you.
Let's see. Okay, I'll see whether I can. Oh, does it work?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay, great. Yes. Okay, so yes, so if I have to kind of look at what is novel of the kind of research methodology we have been used, and also of the research design, I would say, that we have been used. Well, basically the novelty here is in fact in mainly perhaps the methods, the mixed method, of course, but also the way in which we let these different methods talking to each other. In fact, we used a kind of approach, which, as we call it, is very sequential, in the sense that we moved from a kind of theoretical perspective of precarity, which is based on this unpaid labor, which we investigated in a kind of a comparative proposal looking at different work areas or sectors across and within different countries. So we moved from this kind of theoretical perspective based on qualitative research grounded theory to a valid standardized multi-indicator measurement of this unpaid labor, which was very much based on quantitative methods. Now, this is novel, and at the same time, I think it's quite a kind of shift, if you like, in comparison to what, in fact, comparative industrial employment relation research has been doing so far, in the sense that it is not completely unusual, in the sense that, of course, industrial employment relation research has been, in fact, using this kind of mixed method, moving from qualitative to quantitative, but it's not so much common. And the reason why it's not common is because it's very complex. The complexity, particularly of this approach, consists particularly in trying to harmonize results in a kind of cross-national fashion. And this was basically one of the main challenge which we faced, in the sense that, trying to guarantee consistency and harmonization cross-nationally meant, when we look at the sector, to look at sector where, in fact, precarity has been investigated and reported by existing research. And here you can see the creative industries, gig economy, home care, has been, in fact, indicated being precarious work, although to different extent and in different ways. And also, looking at different countries, I mean, here we use not only the kind of approach of the varieties of capitalism approach in terms of looking at different institutional settings, but we also tried to cluster countries based on the different cultural expectations, reflected particularly in social policy, like, for example, family policies and gender roles across different countries. And that was the way in which, in fact, we kind of navigated the kind of difficulties and complexity. Now, if I go a bit more into that, so how we did it in practice. So for the qualitative approach, we used grounded theory, narrative biographical interviews, and working diaries. And for the quantitative, we use a survey module and latent class analysis for analyzing the different forms and kind of measure of unpaid labor across the different latent classes that we identified. As I said, it was a sequential design, so we moved from one to the other. And this, in fact, was quite appealing in terms of creating a kind of a context in which we could particularly address our comparative way of looking at what were the forms of unpaid labor and how they emerged. Which in fact gave us the possibility then to measure specifically. But particularly, I think that the most important key message of the methodology we used, the research design we used, consists in the communication between these different methods, which proved quite interesting in trying to investigate something which was not quite acknowledged in the existing knowledge, in particularly unpaid labor, which, although, we started from a kind of assumption about what it is, the time and effort, but nevertheless, we had to listen our participants in the qualitative research to know more specifically about what exactly they meant. Now, very quickly, what kind of specific challenges we faced, aside what I said already? Well, particularly moving from, as I said, a qualitative to a quantitative approach was quite challenging, particularly let's say that moving from sector-specific experiences and in the particular work areas we investigated into a kind of a concise set of survey questions proved quite difficult. Exactly also because we had to make sure that all the questions, when we moved from the qualitative to the quantitative were applicable to a general public. So this sometimes meant to for us move behind qualitative data. And secondly, last, we had the necessity to kind of move into new forms of operationalization of the unpaid labor in terms of enhancing the representativeness of our sample. And this meant sometimes loss of information during the process. And I will close here. As I said before, I think that the the kind of key message here is that if we want to investigate, particularly industrial employment relations research, some topics, some issues which are not really very much known, also in labor market research, I think that perhaps the research design and the methods we have been using, mixed method, inductive, sequential, could be a good appealing kind of way to address the kind of topics, unknown topics in the different work, in the different research that people might want to engage to. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Valeria. That's really insightful. It's great to see mixed method being used and applied so well, particularly across country. And your insights are very resonate well, I think, with many researchers, particularly the ability of different research methods to talk to each other is something that I think many of the participants here today will take away from your presentation. And I encourage people to read in depth your chapter. I think there's some fantastic insights that can be gained from there. In particular, the movement from qualitative to quantitative, I think, is particularly unique. So many thanks today for joining us and for providing that great pressé and insights from your chapter. Many thanks.
Thank you.
We're going to now move on to another very interesting topic, and we're joined here today by Clement Sefa Nyarko from King's College London. Good morning, Clement, or good evening, Clement. Nice to have you join us.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me, please?
I can indeed. You're going to present to us today an overview on your chapter, which is autoethnography as a research method, which you've conducted with 3 of your colleagues there. Can I ask you to share, please, your slides?
Yes, I think I've shared a wrong slide. Let me try again. I think so this.
Clement has written this chapter along with Jane Alver and Kirsty Ward and Prima Roma Wolandri.
Yes, you're right. Thank you. Hi everyone. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today and to present this little piece of work, which I believe, can you see my screen all right?
We have gone into presenter mode, so we're getting your kind of presenter mode. So maybe you could...
It's fine, I'll just take it off, it's fine, yeah. All right, so...
Maybe perhaps full screen as well, Clement.
Yeah, that's okay. All right, so is it okay now, please? Yes, so this is a piece of work that my colleagues and I did, mainly for 2 pieces. The first piece was looking specifically at diversity and inclusion in the workplace in international development practice. And that's for another project. And then we thought, well, we have used this methodology to do that. Why don't we write about the methodology itself? So this is more like a byproduct of that project. But the idea is to recreate the way we see methods and projects, so that we try to move away from carefully designed methodologies like boardroom conversations that bring about, set up the study in a very careful, strategic way, which often has weaknesses, but also strengths. To try to move away from that to what we call autoethnography, which I'm sure many of you know, is simply an approach that's qualitative and reflective and builds on individual experiences and perceptions, and to understand the bigger societal orientations. And so we set it up to have that reflective component. So it's we as individuals who have worked in international development practice for several years, many of us, and while some of us are also academics, so that transitioning of spaces. But also we recognize that even as individuals, in academia and development practice. We are also human beings, men, women, mothers, fathers, and all those experiences come together into that collective experience sharing and data gathering. And so the uniqueness is that it's reflective, it's experiential, but also most importantly, we co-own the data. So we are both the researchers and the researchee. There were 4 of us, we've had 5, and whilst we reflected on our experiences around diversity and inclusion, international development practice based on what we had done in the past and what we were doing, we also had to use that reflection as the data for our analysis. I'm sorry, and so you that co-creation, co-ownership, and that analysis of the data added to some of the weaknesses you would find in other kinds of studies that put the researcher as a distinct entity from the data side. Because it is autoethnography and it is based on our own individual experiences, we know that already introduces some biases. And so we are talking about how we experience diversity and inclusion in the workplace, and each of us has our own experiences. So we strengthened that through the collaborative component. So ours became what we call collaborative autoethnography rather than just autoethnography, in which case it means that each person's experience was unique and relevant for the study, but that collaborative engagement where each of us shared our experiences and we critiqued and asked questions and probed into that, strengthened the methodologies and took it away from just that subjective individual storytelling to a collaborative data collection and co-creation of knowledge. So that project, we were able to produce that in the way it is. Now, in terms of lessons learned, the key takeaways, because this is individuals sharing their intimate stories, there was a need to have some, to break down some assumptions and make sure that things that would create barriers are broken down as much as possible. And, so we made sure that the language we chose, for instance, was understandable to many or everyone on board. Assumptions were tested, and we made sure that we dealt with all that from the outset. And that strengthened the collegiality that was needed to make sure that this was successful. So we needed to make sure we built trust, rapport from the beginning, and that each person felt safe in the space, partly because this was a team of people, some from the global north, global south, some men, women, and all kinds of backgrounds as well. Because we moved from being just autoethnography to collaborative autoethnography, there was a sense in which the I had to coincide with the them in a way that is not forced, but built with collegiality in there, so that the stories I told about my own experiences working in Ghana, in the UK, in Australia, across the world, was unique to me, but also coincided with the stories that other colleagues who had equally lived in Australia, in Indonesia, in other places shared. So it became a very interesting study. So that coincidence of the I and the them and the they in that story became part of the narrative. I think I'll end here before my kids hijack this meeting.
Thank you, Clement.
So you've already done a lot.
Not at all. It's nice to see the collaborative nature of your research reflected in your home environment as well. Many thanks, and thanks to your kids also for joining. It's nice to see. Thank you for those fantastic insights into what is an increasingly popular research method. I think it really will resonate with people, the kind of experimental and reflective nature of this research method. So thank you. Many thanks for joining us today. And I'm sure that you will gain some great comments and questions with regard to your method. Again, and to encourage people to post their questions or any comments that they might have in the Q&A box or the chat box. We will ask each of our contributors to respond very briefly to them as we go through the presentation. I'm now going to take a bit of a sideward shift away from the kind of qualitative nature of research methods towards looking at something that's quite innovative, I think, using a lot of the databases that they have in ETUI that I'd encourage you to have a look at. They're fantastic resources. We're joined today by Marcus Meyer-Erdmann and Ruta Lipina, who are going to talk to us today about computational annotation. This is a fantastic chapter. I read it many times, Marcus and Ruta, and gained a lot of knowledge from your fantastic contribution. So over to you to tell us more about that.
Thank you very much also for having us. I hope that this is the correct screen, just making sure that you can see what I can see. Excellent. So good morning, evening, afternoon to all of you, and many thanks indeed that we could contribute to this field guide. Our chapter presented today by me is written by Ruta Lipina, who joins me tonight from University of Bologna, and to data scientists / data engineers. As just was alluded to, we are working with databases at ETUI to quite some degree, and therefore Pedro Hernandez Serrano as data engineer and Walter Simoncini as the data scientist and developer. They co-authored this chapter where we developed a computational annotation framework, mainly done by Ruta, based on a database development on European Works Councils, as well as European companies and also World Works Councils. Now, what is this? I'm myself at the ETUI, and what we have is a database on these European Works Council agreements mainly. And what these are is a tremendous data source, and is one of the few in data scarcity, which we will probably hear also in a different presentation again, is or scattered data is an issue when it comes to social sciences and legal research. And especially in this case, European Works Council agreements, they are not standardized. So they are legal texts, but they are in different formats and use also different languages, etc. And to overcome this, we developed this computational annotation framework and developed a closed data pipeline in order to analyze this. And I will share a few slides on this with you. Now, the key issue is that this data analysis was firstly hindered by data access and also data scarcity. And we wanted to extract information, legal information, but also information that is relevant to societal stakeholders, such as trade unions, also European Works Council representatives, policymakers, academia. There's lots of stakeholders who benefit from data that needs to be collected first from these agreements. And we also have at the moment the revision of the European Works Council directive. So also legislative change should be fueled, and that is also my firm belief, and also of the co-authors, that it should be evidence-based. And especially in this field where law is being written by the parties, these are negotiated between management and employee representatives. It is crucial that we gather best practices, good practices from these agreements, but also in cases which are not so great, and where we find, for instance, gaps in the legislative framework. And that was our key issues that we were faced with. And therefore, we developed this computational legal framework, which is Ruta's specialization, and used existing methods, but applied them to this framework. And we combined this with technological innovation. And these days, the database is now turning 30 soon. And the database started off in a really rudimentary form. But now we can use state-of-the-art technology and natural language processing models to work on these data sets. And what we did was, and what our contribution is we developed this custom-made data architecture. What we did was we developed a legal annotation framework. It's a little app that our annotators can use. And you can see here on the screen our schema. What we do is we extrapolate information from directly the documents, the PDFs, and we store that in our database. And this information then can be further analyzed. It's an API where we can plug in with our database website. So if you want to know more about this, you can go to the European Works Council's database, and you can find then this information that we extracted from the agreements. And we also do more in-depth analysis of the agreements itself. The impact is then that it's innovative. We combine here qualitative and quantitative methods. We extrapolate quantitative information as well as qualitative ones, and it is a user-friendly format because it gives all the stakeholders involved the opportunity to work with this data set. And we also use data science methods to further analyze this, for instance, by matching the text of the agreements with legislation and then see whether it is matching or not. So there's lots of impactful research that is to come, and stay tuned for that. And many thanks for your attention. And if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat box. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcus. That really was a masterclass on how to access and analyze really important data sets, which many people are quite often quite anxious about accessing. And I think your chapter provides some great insights and ways in which people can not just access the databases, but also analyze the data within that. So I encourage people to really dig deep into your chapter and to reach out to you and the ETUI with regard to the data sets that are available for researchers in the field of researching employment and industrial relations. Thank you both for joining us this morning or this evening for you. We're going to now move on to, and I'd like to welcome Professor Bernd Brandl from Durham University in the UK Business School. Good morning, Bernd. And he's going to talk to us about a related topic. His chapter is on the advantages and disadvantages of using important data sets in the field of comparative employment relations. So again, for many of us who are in the field of international and comparative employment relations, this is a very important contribution. Good morning or good evening to you, Bernd.
I prefer to say hello, everyone. Thank you, because hello, I think, is time zone neutral. So I'm not stepping into any potholes. So thank you very much for this. Also, I think the presentation by Marcus before wasn't only a master class on the topic itself, but it was also a master class on how to use technology and also how to do a presentation on time. So the standards are already high. I'm trying to give my best on this. So let me just give you an outline about my chapter with the title, The Advantages and Disadvantages of Important Data Sets in the Field of Comparative Industrial Relations. Basically, what I wanted to do, can you see my second slide?
We can't. I wonder, could we ask you to put it into master mode or to presentation mode?
Well,
thank you. If we go to either slideshow or if you click on the button down below, perfect. We can see the second slide, but not in full.
I think that's the best I can do,
because
otherwise it might get worse. So, I mean, just to give you an outline, what I wanted to do is give an overview of the different databases that are available in the field. And I think the motivation behind this is that I think there is data available, but it's scattered around different databases. And first of all, I wanted to give an overview where which data is, and also what can be integrated, what can be used for comparative research. So in this sense, I thought about also giving an outline about what can be done with some databases or with some data, and what cannot be done with some data that is available in databases. This was the first idea. The second idea was also to describe more or discuss more the quality of the data in the sense that how is it changing over the years? And I wanted to make clear that, first of all, the quality definitely is getting better. And the second thing is that I think there is a bit of a shift away from macro level data that is collected towards micro data that is collected. And both have advantages and disadvantages and can be very useful, but cannot necessarily be used for the same research questions or analysis. Can you see now my second slide or the third one? The last one?
We can see the third one. Thank you, Bernd.
Okay, yeah. So what can be learned is that there is data available, there is useful data available, but not all data is useful for all research questions. So I would also wanted to raise the awareness and be more critical on what can be used and what cannot be used. And the idea is, or what are the takeaways, that I hope this chapter can contribute to a more informed and a better decision making on what data is available and for what it should be used and for what not. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity also to contribute to this very important book. Thank you.
You, Bernd. That's fantastic. Not just in understanding the value and the quality of data available, but also the appropriateness of the data that's available. I think your insight about the shift from the micro to the macro is an important and very interesting insight in your chapter, and I'm sure it will generate quite a lot of discussion. So many thanks for joining us today and for that fantastic presentation. We are now going to move towards looking at something slightly different, and that is the use of a social movement lens, which is increasingly popular in employment relations. And we're joined this morning by Stefan Lacue from James Cook University in Australia. Good morning, Stefan. And he's going to talk to us today with his colleague Ivan with regard to their presentation of researching trade union movements through the lens of social movements and shades of activism. Do we have you both online?
Noelle, excuse me, it's Jane. No, unfortunately, we don't have Stefan, I don't think, and Ivan is on a train caught between tunnels, so can't get connectivity. But one thing we could do perhaps is use the master set to put Stefan's slides up and try to talk them through.
Perhaps, Jane, we could return to them, and we might shift maybe if just talking about the messiness of research methods, but perhaps we could move towards your and Janet's presentation and maybe return to Stefan and Ivan's presentation afterwards. Would that give us some time and some leeway, flexibility?
No problem at all, and we'll see how he might have come out of those tunnels by then.
Great, many thanks. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Janet Sayers. Kia ora, Janet. Morena, it's morning time here in New Zealand, where we join you. And Janet Sayers is a professor at the Massey University in New Zealand, and herself and Jane have done a fantastic piece and contribution with regard to transdisciplinarity research on equity in the workplace. Thank you, Janet. Would you like to share your slides? That's fantastic. Many thanks for joining us this morning.
Hello and kia ora koutou from New Zealand, Aotearoa. Lovely to be here. My I'm just going to talk briefly about a chapter that Jane Parker and I wrote based on a large project that we completed recently on pay equity in the New Zealand public service. Our chapter reflects on transdisciplinarity as a research method, and so I'm going to focus mainly on the potential of transdisciplinarity, and also a little bit about the challenges and advantages of the approach. So a transdisciplinarity has some connections, obviously, to some of the other methods, mixed methods in particular, and also feminist research methodologies. Also, quite a few other ones, but probably its closest correlation would be to interdisciplinary approaches, which many of you may be familiar with. It's generally talked about mainly in sciences and particularly in health sciences, looking at really complex social and technical problems, such as, for example, aging in the health sector. But we believe it's got a lot of potential in industrial relations and employment relations, and we used it to frame our own project. Basically, TR has evolved to address real-world, global, complex, wicked problems that require collaborative and holistic approaches. The main antecedent in industrial relations would be the radical pluralism of people like Paul Edwards. So it sort of draws on the multidisciplinary and the interdisciplinary nature of IR already. The thing that might differentiate it from, say, interdisciplinarity is it's very overtly participative, intersectional and inclusive, and very action-oriented and solution-focused. The other key things I'd like to point out with regard particularly to the study that we did is it drew on insights from feminism, Indigenous methodologies, psychology, economics, labour studies, management, organisational behaviour, and it came up with a practical solution, which was basically a kite, which is the basket that you can see there on the screen, as a tailored approach to enabling the public service agencies that we dealt with a whole lot of solution-based approaches to augment their diversity and inclusion solutions within their organisations. Just very quickly then, the advantages and challenges of the approach. I think, first of all, it sees pluralism as a positive, not a weakness. We're using them. I think it's interesting to use the metaphor of bricolage a little to understand the weak points and the strengths of the approach. It does enable some creativity and new forms of knowledge. But of course, there is a danger of, oops, that's my timer, stop. Just throw it in the bin. I won't be one more second. The only thing I really wanted to mention to finish is the danger of colonising approaches within this this field, and that when you do use different epistemological and ontological approaches to the same serious problem, then there is always the danger of overpowering other approaches, and you need to be particularly sensitive to that. It's based on good relationships and keeping the integrity of different approaches. So anyway, thank you very much. We're most welcome. Would love to talk more if anyone wants to in the question and answers or later. Thank you very much.
Kia ora, Janet and Jane, thank you very much. I think that's a really important contribution to the book, and particularly because it looks at transdisciplinarity, and it surfaces some of those kind of very important intersectional issues with regard to research and the voices, the marginalised, but are very marginalised voices. I think your cautionary notes with regard to the colonized approaches that exist within research methods will lead to some interesting developments in the future. And also the note with regard to power dynamics, particularly with regard to gender equity, I think are well made and are well surfaced in your chapter. So I encourage, and particularly researchers in the field of gender equality and gender equity, to deeply engage with your chapter. So many thanks to you both for that. I'm not sure that we have either. Oh, we do. Ivan. Good morning, Ivan, or good evening. You're very
Hello.
welcome. How are you? We'd like
I'm
to welcome.
fine from my train.
Oh, good. This is also the messy world of research that we've just been discussing, and the nature by which we have to often engage in our field of research, both from the confines of our offices and outside the confines of our offices. So I'd just like to very much welcome you today and look forward to your contribution looking at research trade union movements through the lens of social movements and shades of activism. So many thanks for joining us today. Maybe you'd like to introduce yourself a little and your colleagues with regard to this chapter. Ivan.
Well, with my bad English, I will try to do my best. I've known Stéphane Lequeux from a long time. He's French in Australia, teaching in GCU, James Cook University, and his colleague is from Australia. And Cox, she's a Vietnamese. So my part from this chapter is small. I would like to share my PowerPoint here. Should be here.
Ivan, we have them. We have a master copy up already. So we have. If you could just like to tell us which slide to move to, we could. Oh, that's good. You're sharing your screen.
Can you see it or
not yet, but perhaps in a minute.
Yes.
No, not yet.
Okay. So, I try to sum up my point.
Ivan, could you please just put them in full mode because we see half a slide, if that's okay. Apologies.
Voilà. Yes, it's better.
And not quite.
So the idea is to fit in a kind of new deal about framework of social movement and activism. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes. All good? Yes.
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 Spontaneity is okay. My point is about spontaneity as a perfect illustration of this kind of new framework. I wanted to underline that things are not necessarily planned before and can arrive spontaneously. The idea is that spontaneity can make you think over some classic notion, put it into perspective. Like leadership can be spontaneous, appearing in the heat of the moment, inside a movement. Emotion is quite known to be spontaneous. Anger or moral shock are spontaneous. But there is also a speed of thought in action. Pre-network can precede action, but are also the product of it. 4, organizational voluntarism can be combined with a plan, but also with improvisation. 5, ID. You may have ideas before, but you can also come up with them. Politicization not limited to recognition. It can also be innovative. At last but not least, confrontation. Creativity and collective mobilization are limited to a confrontational response. They are mainly the basis for a more egalitarian organization. That's some point. That are some. Here you have some point to illustrate what can be spontaneity and why we have tried to talk about it in this chapter about new perspective, new framework on activism and mobilization. Thank you.
Thank you, Ivan, for that great presentation and for joining us today under the circumstances that you face. We really appreciate your contribution to the book and to the webinar today. I really like the kind of the notion that you have around spontaneity and the importance of understanding the spontaneous nature of research methods is a point I think that will be taken well by many of the researchers joining us today and many of the participants. So many thanks to you again for your contribution today and to the book. Apologies, that was 9 contributions, chapter contributors giving you a short précis of each of their chapters, and we would encourage you to dig deeper into each of their chapters to understand many of the kind of insights and challenges that they have presented today. I'm going to now hand over to Sue Ressia, who's going to provide, introduce some kind of insights from Di Kelly, who's going to do some closing remarks, and then Sue's going to wrap up for us today. So many thanks, Sue.
Thank you very much, Noelle. I do know that there has been a question that has been raised in the chat. I'm not sure, Jane, if you wanted to mention anything there, or perhaps it has been directed to Bert Brandel, asking to elaborate more on the existing data set for comparison of employment relations in Europe and the nature of the data sets. So maybe, Bert, if you could answer that question in relation to time. We do have some closing remarks from Di Kelly. So I believe Maria is on hand to show us Di's response or presentation of the overview. Okay, I think it's coming through now. Thanks very much. Maria, I don't think we can hear.
Yes, I'm sorry, but there is a problem. I'll try again.
Thank you.
Can't share the sound. Something happened. Wait, just. Not English.
So just to mention that Di Kelly wrote a very definitive book about 25 years ago on research in researching industrial relations down this part of the world, and is well established in the field of industrial relations here and well known to many of us down this part of the world. So it was a fantastic contribution from her to get some closing comments from her.
Sorry, just tell me if you don't hear.
Summarised all of those wonderful chapters, and I'm not even going to try. It has been such a marvellous experience to read them all before I wrote the foreword, and to then hear and see the researchers. You know, it's lovely to see the face behind the names tonight. I think what I'd like to say is that whether it's for practical or activist or scholarly science building research, there are some foundations that good research always needs. A commitment to thoroughness, to rigour, and to integrity, of course, to critical thinking, to good theory, an awareness of the discipline and its contexts, both the interior ones of what works in this discipline, what's needed, accepting messiness, accepting the challenges and the arguments, but also the external ones, which industrial relations, employment relations have perhaps been more vulnerable to than many other academic disciplines in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And of course, this awareness of we're studying a core of society, and societies are messy, they are not changing, they are volatile. And trying to do good research, taking account of all of these things, requires one more aspect, and that is reflectivity in terms of our research methods and our research processes. And if you ever want to see a wonderful example of reflectivity, it's what we have seen here in this launch, this overview of the book. Too often, scholars try the same methods, stay with the same safe ways. I know some colleagues who've been using the same principles for many, many years, and that is not appropriate for a discipline, whether you are a science-bound scholar or a practical scholar. So it behoves us as scholars or researchers, activists, not to be self-satisfied, as everybody has shown tonight, with old methods, old theories, old technologies or approaches. Our research field is broad, ever-changing, ever-challenging, and it needs to rise to those challenges. That's why this is a wonderful book, and that's why it will be, for a long time, the go-to book for many people, because it will encourage people to reflect, to look at opportunities, and to think through, am I doing the right way? The honesty that shined not only from tonight, but from your chapters, is what is important for good research. So I'd just like to offer huge congratulations to the publishers, to Etui, if I said that right, to the editors, and to all the authors, because I think it's a terrific publication. It's going to be around for a long time and going to be admired for a long time. So congratulations to you all. Thank you.
And thanks very much to Di for her wonderful wrap up of this amazing book, and for her foreword as well that she has contributed to the book. I know that we're very close to time, or a little bit over, but I'd just like to extend our thanks to you on behalf of the editorial team, as well as Elgar and Etui, and thanking all of the authors who have come along today and also in last week's webinar as well, and presented their really interesting and insightful chapters in relation to researching industrial relations and employment relations. And we hope that, or we know that this book is going to be a fantastic companion for researchers now and in the future. And I've certainly got my PhD student, tabbed in the book for important areas that they can focus on to take employment relations and IR research forward as well. So again, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank you all for your time this evening. Congratulations on your chapters, and thank you all very much for your participation. And thanks again to Elgar and to Etui. Good night, everyone.